Another way of thinking about this question, I think, is to ask a slightly different question, which is, if the poem isn't so interested in what happens, what is it that the poem is interested in? Is it interested in asking us to think about why it happens, why Eve and then Adam eat the fruit? Well, I think when you get to book 9, you will see that that Eve and Adam fall for different reasons. Their reasons for eating the fruit differ from each other, and we do indeed, I think, come to understand the differences in their motivations. But I think if we go back even further, if you go back to book 1 and those first 26 lines which you're being asked to read, there I think we get, if you like, a different motivation for keeping reading, because there Milton very clearly sets out for us the project of the poem as a whole. And that project, he says, is twofold. It's to assert eternal providence and to justify the ways of God to men. So in asserting eternal providence, he's wanting to demonstrate to us, if you like, God's beneficence, God's goodness, his generosity to his creation. But he's also wanting to justify the ways of God to men. In other words, to make sense of the punishment of Adam and Eve and all the sorrow, the pain, the loss that follows from that. So that is the project of the poem, and that is maybe what the puzzle of the poem is. As we read the poem, how persuaded are we that Milton is indeed justifying the ways of God to us as we read? How persuaded are we of the eternal providence, the generosity, the goodness of the God who inflicts this punishment on Adam and Eve? It's not an easy task, a story of punishment, and it's hard to reconcile that perhaps with this assertion of the providence, the goodness of God. But that's perhaps one of the other things which keeps us reading. Another thing to think about as we read, well, I've mentioned already that the opening 26 lines of the poem set out the project of the poem. What we also find there is that Milton is calling on his muse. He's asking help from his poetic muse as he embarks on this great project, and he in particular is asking for help with this, with what he calls his adventurous song. He says, I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, as his poem pursues things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. So he suggests that there's a boldness to his project, and he wants help from his muse for that project. So he's naming this as an ambitious project. He's also, in those opening lines, naming it as he's embarking on a poem that is deliberately engaging with the epics, the classical epics of his forebears, if you like, his poetic forebears, and his ambition is to outstrip them. So have a think about how he says he's going to outdo the work of these earlier iconic epic poets, but then compare the invocation that you will find at the beginning of book 9, where he's also asking for help from his muse. What kind of mood do you find in that second invocation, that second request for assistance from the muse? What's the mood of the poet as he goes into book 9, which is the culmination of the story that he is retelling here? Okay, is he similarly making claims about the boldness, the ambition of his project, or is he striking a rather different note? And if so, what kind of assistance is he looking for from his muse?